On November 29, 2017, Congressman Don Beyer told reporters from Tasnim, a news service based in Tehran, Iran, that the death of Bijan Gassar has been shrouded in an unacceptable level of opacity. While I recognize that the matter is subject to an ongoing investigation, the public, particularly his family and friends, deserve to know what happened here, and I will continue pressing the Park Police and the FBI until we get answers. But in his Christmas sermon about the interrelatedness of humanity, a minister from Atlanta who believed and preached that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere said, one of the great philosophical debates of history has been over the whole question of means and ends. And there have always been those who argue that the end justifies the means, that the means really aren't all that important. The important thing is to get to the end, you see. So if you're seeking to develop a just society, they say, the important thing is to get there, and the means are really unimportant. Any means will do so long as they get you there. They may be violent, they may be untruthful means, they may even be unjust means to a just end. There have been those who have argued this throughout history, but we will never have peace in this world until men everywhere recognize that ends are not cut off from means, because the means represent the ideal in the making and the end in process. And ultimately you can't reach good ends through evil means, because the means represent the seed and the end represents the tree. For Christmas 1967, just 4 months before he died, a man with a dream gave to the world a great and wonderful Christmas present in the form of a sermon. And he said two important things about his morality and the world perspective derived from a basic concept of interrelatedness and interconnectivity of human interactions that connected even the grower of coffee beans in the nation of Colombia to the man who sat behind an oak desk on Wall Street, reading his morning paper while drinking the product that was picked by that grower's hand. It was that relevant ministry that compelled him not to sit idly by in Atlanta and to travel all the way to Birmingham to sit alone in a jail cell because injustice was there. And that same relevant ministry that compelled him yet again to board a plane upon which there was a bomb threat to go all the way to Memphis 4 months after this Christmas sermon to tell a story about a good Samaritan while he encouraged others to engage in a selfless, dangerous selflessness ministry, to come to the aid of sanitation workers, exhorting all to forget about going to work, forget about going to school, and to be there, and to think of another person and what would happen to them if you did not. That incredibly gifted and melodious baritone voice of the son of a preacher man was the man who had launched a bus boycott that changed the ways we even travel by train from Union Station in D.C. to a destination just across the river at King Street, Amtrak Station, permitting both black and white together to travel in the same railway car, spoke these words about what his imagination told him about peace on earth in that holiday season. Now let me suggest first that if we are to have peace on earth, our loyalties must become ecumenical rather than sectional. Our loyalties must transcend our race, our tribe, our class, and our nation. And this means we must develop a world perspective. No individual can live alone. No nation can live alone. And as long as we try, the more we are going to have war in this world. Now the judgment of God is upon us, and we must either learn to live together as brothers, or we are all going to perish together as fools. And in a time of a house divided that cannot stand by itself, these words are so very important today. But those words are not often heard, even from those who attack the alleged divisiveness of a not-my president, who even on the first day of his administration decided also to launch a boycott and a protest, which even now has Congressman Don Beyer telling us that he is a drum major for justice, even in tragic events of violence that visited the suburbs of our nation's capital during a holiday season in November 2017, the very year of the tragedy in Charlottesville that left a paralegal dead and 2 police officers. But where one prompted the national wave of renaming high schools and removing statues, the shooting of a 25-year-old son of immigrants in a place where even police will not apprehend those who are undocumented, brought no major changes for life, even in a place where Northern Virginians are told by every sign that appears in a front lawn or on a corner that we have no home here for hate. Yet details began to slowly emerge about a tragic stop gone wrong on the George Washington Expressway just before the celebration of Thanksgiving, a time of families coming together. And the earliest details suggest that a young accountant was the victim of an accident in which another driver, perhaps in a rush to get wherever he or she was going, was following him a little too closely and struck the rear bumper of his vehicle. There were very few details about what transpired at this accident scene. In a recent report by Peggy Fox, a local news reporter for WUSA 9, but it is very clear from that account, just weeks ago reported in the news, that this young man and the other person in the accident had decided, like many others in similar situations, that whatever damage that had occurred was not important enough or large enough to get the police involved and the insurance companies. And this young accountant just proceeded on his way. It would appear that from that account that they had just decided to settle the matter out of court. But in a report by the New York Times dated January 25th, 2018, not long after the shooting, paradoxically, there is yet more detail than has disappeared in the present. As the reporter states, the Department of the Interior's traffic crash report, a copy of which was obtained by the New York Times, says the episode began on November 17th at 7:31 p.m. According to the report, Mr. Gassar was driving south on George Washington Memorial Parkway, a federal road, in a green Jeep when he abruptly stopped in the roadway. The car behind Mr. Gassar then rear-ended him, according to the report, and Mr. Gassar drove away. The driver who struck Mr. Gassar's Jeep got a citation for failing to maintain proper control, according to the police report, which did not classify the episode as a hit and run. It was not entirely clear why the park police sought Mr. Gassar, given that they cited the other driver. The video captured by the Fairfax County Police begins about 6 minutes later at 7:37 p.m. It appears to show the Jeep being pursued by a park police car, its lights flashing and sirens blaring. A Fairfax County police officer follows behind. Reporting this same release of video footage on January 24th, 2018, the local reporters at WTOP in Washington state the video shows police twice stopping the Jeep driven by Gassar, and each time he drives off as officers approach his vehicle. During the third attempt to stop Gassar, officers can be seen with their guns drawn and pointed at the Jeep's driver's side window. Several shots can be heard as the vehicle once again starts to move, then a pause followed by several more shots and another pause. 2 more shots ring out as the wheels on the Jeep once again begin moving. The Jeep tips over into a ditch near a stop sign at the corner of Fort Hunt Road and Alexandria Avenue as the video ends. Other vehicles could be seen driving by the stop as the shots rang out in a residential neighborhood not far from the parkway. It was not clear at what point Gassar was struck. The video footage is taken from the reinforcements joining the pursuit of what appears to be a fleeing suspect, identified in just 6 minutes. Just 6 minutes after an accident occurred on the George Washington Memorial Parkway. But anyone familiar with standard law enforcement procedure would not only have questions about why the police were moving to interdict what was, by official report, to be a victim of a vehicle that rear-ended him from behind within 6 minutes, and for which the driver received a citation for his negligence in following a vehicle too closely behind and not maintaining control, despite the abrupt stop by the victim, is what happens next in the pursuit. We can see on the video not just a relatively high but not especially excessive speed chase of a car not out of control, joined by reinforcement law enforcement officers from the Fairfax County Police, but also upon the successful interdiction by 2 patrol cars in hot pursuit, with sirens sounding and lights flashing on a relatively deserted road. The lead car stopped not in front of the vehicle to prevent a suspect from fleeing, as is proper police procedure, but rather we see that trained law enforcement officer parked alongside, blocking the road, while the officer on the passenger side exits the patrol car with a pistol drawn to engage in communication with the surrendering suspect, who has complied and pulled along the side of the road. The tension between the apprehending officer and the driver in the fleeing vehicle is patently clear, and we see the victim, perhaps in fear from the approach, pull away, and he would not have been able to do so had proper police procedure been exercised at that point. Further down the road, we see paradoxically law enforcement officers make the exact same tactical error in the interdiction of a fleeing vehicle, which again has signaled compliance by pulling over to the side of the road. The apprehending officer yet again parks along the side and exits to again engage aggressively with the driver, and again, not surprisingly, with guns drawn against the victim of a rear-ender of which he, by official report, was not found to have been at fault. And even at the third final stop of the fleeing vehicle, we can see very clearly that a vehicle with a driver who had been engaged by small arms fire in a blocked vehicle interdicted by a lead vehicle and backup, which captured the video, could not have fled at that point. But yet there are multiple shots, officially totaled at 9, that struck the victim 4 times in the left side of the head and once in the wrist, resulting in fatal wounds from which he succumbed in a hospital 10 days later. But by official report, this 4-minute exchange that left a victim of a rear-ender on the parkway dead has been called officially self-defense, despite violations of apprehension procedure and the use of lethal force where no evidence of a threat of bodily harm to any officer is in evidence. On November 28, 2017, after the death of the victim, it was reported in the Covering Corridor, an online publication, that the public deserves to know about the events which resulted in the death of Bijan Gassar, Byer said in a statement. I have been in touch with both the Park Police and the FBI seeking details, and we will continue to press them for more answers until we get a full understanding of what happened. And this all suggests an indication of great concern to the public at large. On February 13th, 2018, it was reported on the local broadcasting station that, according to the lawmakers, Chief Robert McLean canceled the meeting at the last minute because he believed it would be a violation of anti-lobbying laws, a reason that was not satisfactory to both Byer and Norton. This is just after the release of the dashboard video, and might just suggest to some an indication of concern by 2 members of Congress. But it is puzzling why 2 members of Congress would not have known beforehand about any lobbying laws that would have prevented the meeting from having occurred. And even odder, that they had to be informed at the police station after waiting for a considerable period in front of news cameras, only to leave in apparent protest and disgust, particularly occurring with officials from the agency with whom Congressman Byer boasts he had served once as a ranger after graduation from the elite Williams College as a Phi Beta Kappa major in economics, and before taking a job at his father's automobile dealership selling cars. The Washington Post reported on September 20th, 2018, 9 months after the release of the video, the congressman who represents the area where the shooting occurred, Representative Don Byer, Democrat of Virginia, asked for a meeting with relevant officials, including FBI Director Christopher A. Wray, and was rebuffed, which might again suggest an indication of great concern. On November 16, 2018, 10 months after the release of the dashboard video, 9 months after being rebuffed by law enforcement for a conflict with lobby laws, both Byer and Holmes appear yet again to engage on the issue they have told the press is very critical, and they introduce legislation to require body cameras and dashboard cameras. Congressman Byer states quizzically to the press on this occasion, the still unexplained killing of Bijan Gassar shows how important it is to make these reforms, which will benefit victims, officers, and the communities they serve. No family should have to endure what the Gassars have gone through over the past year, and this bill would help prevent that from happening again. But there was a video, which it must be assumed that Congressman Beyer and Congressman Holmes Norton had seen before they traveled to the police office, only to appear greatly frustrated with the system before the television cameras, and which they should have known 10 months later when they introduced legislation to provide cameras that provided the video that they should have seen before they had gone to the police. In fact, according to the Washington Post, on February 18th, 2018, which covered the story of the frustrated meeting, Congressman Beyer, presumptively having seen the dashboard video, states, pointing a finger of blame at the Secretary of the Interior for the current administration. The Washington Post reports, Beyer said he and other members of Congress had sent a letter to the Interior Department urging to adopt clearer policies. On June 18th, 2019, we find Senator Mark Warner engaging in the news to address a situation in which he is not only one of the senators and fellow residents of the city of Alexandria with Congressman Beyer, but also kicking off an election season for 2020, appearing in the Washington Post, but in an article in which a Republican senator from the Midwest receives top billing on the headline, while the gentleman from Virginia provides the graphic for the story. And on the topic about which his colleague, Senator Tim Kaine, has never yet made a major public statement in the press, which is consistent with the policy expressed by his office with regard to intervention in police and legal matters with regard to Duffy Taylor, an internet stalker who has been positively identified to be connected to Chechen criminal activity and to reside in Arlington, Virginia, and validated to have engaged in at least 108 harassment communications in direct violation of both state and federal law, including hate crime, but also against whom no investigation has yet been launched, and a petition for a writ of mandamus to compel the Commonwealth Attorney, Theo Stamos, was not only dismissed in the court, just as State Attorney General Mark Herring had done upon receipt of a report in July 2018, but also accompanied by an unconstitutional sanction imposed on the complainant without a hearing in accordance with due process or articulating specific reasons, and which, since the issue of the order, resulted in the indefinite suspension of his access to the Arlington County courts on any matter, even though, like the Parkway victim, he had not been charged nor cited with any crime. Perhaps like those young black nationalists about whom Reverend King remarked in his letter from a Birmingham jail, these Democratic Party leaders have adopted the position to achieve their goals by any means necessary. Yet, in the Christmas gift from a dreamer, just months before, violence would take away that preacher of pacifism from the pages of history, meeting physical force with soul force, before recounting later in that speech how just months after his famous address, standing in the shadow of the great conciliator, but once vacillating president. Now let me say that the next thing we must be concerned about, if we are to have peace on earth and goodwill toward men, is the non-violent affirmation of the sacredness of human life. Every man is somebody because he is a child of God. And so when we say, thou shalt not kill, we're really saying that human life is far too sacred to be taken on the battlefields of the world. Man is more than a tiny vagary of whirling electrons or a wisp of smoke from a limitless smoldering. Man is a child of God, made in his image, and therefore must be respected as such. Until men see this everywhere, until nations see this everywhere, we will be fighting wars. One day somebody should remind us that even though there may be political and ideological differences between us, the Vietnamese are our brothers. The Russians are our brothers. The Chinese are our brothers. And one day, we've got to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. But in Christ, there is neither Jew nor Gentile. In Christ, there is neither male nor female. In Christ, there is neither communist nor capitalist. In Christ, somehow there is neither bound nor free. We are all one in Christ Jesus. And when we truly believe in the sacredness of human personality, we won't exploit people. We won't trample over people with iron feet of oppression. We won't kill anybody. Another statesman of that divisive era warned in his inaugural, at which not even one person of another party or ideology chose to protest and boycott, about those who foolishly sought power by riding the back of the tiger, who wound up inside. And a not my president of a present era, in similar vein, stood before a crowd on a cold day in January, a crowd of Christians near the beginning of his presidency, to tell those Americans and all Americans that they must choose life. And so in November, it is a referendum election where you have the power to choose between the party of manumission, slavery, oppression, Jim Crow, and subjugation, or to choose the party of emancipation. In November, you have the power to choose between the party of welfare entitlement and government dependency, or the party of opportunity. In November, you have the power to choose between the party of underperforming public schools and achievement gaps, or the party of school choice. You have the power to choose between the party of mandatory union membership or the party of a right to work. You have the power to choose between the party of universal socialized medicine or the party that will let you choose your provider and your doctor and your insurance plan. In November, you have the power to choose between the party of awaiting the arrival of law enforcement or the party of the right to stand your ground and defend yourself. In November, you have the power to choose between the party of higher taxes and growing bureaucracies or the power of lower taxes and self-determination. It is your party and it is your choice. I am a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican, in that order. And I am not ashamed of the gospel. My name is Major Mike Webb, and I am running for U.S. Congress, not unmindful of the future, with liberty and excellence. Let's make America great again. Honest. This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.